Welcome back, everyone, to day 27 of the 90 Days of AI Native Work Challenge. So, today we are tackling a massive misconception in the data architecture world. It's something I like to call the speed myth. To set the stage here, I want you to imagine two completely different scenarios. Scenario 1. You run a company with 5,000 employees. Does your payroll system really need to process every single employee's salary, calculate all those complex tax withholdings, and manage benefits adjustments every exact second of the day? Well, probably not, right? It's a huge computational lift that requires querying multiple databases and cross-referencing a ton of timesheets. It can honestly just collect that info and run it all at once at the end of the month. But now, think about scenario 2. Imagine someone just stole your credit card. If your bank waits until tomorrow to run a massive query to check if that transaction was fraudulent, you've got a really big problem on your hands. They absolutely need to stop it in its tracks right then and there.
And that brings us to a really central question. Does every business actually need real-time data? It's super tempting to just say yes. We live in this incredibly fast-paced world, so faster must inherently be better, right? Well, the answer is actually a resounding no. And understanding exactly why that is, understanding this whole paradigm shift away from speed at all costs, well, that is the critical lesson of today's explainer. All right, let's dive into this. Today, we're going to cover the real-time data myth, batch and streaming defined, the cost of data freshness, a simple decision framework, and finally, we'll wrap up with data pipelines and AI.
First up, Section 1, Batch and Streaming Defined. Let's clear up some of this jargon.
Okay, it's time to strip away all the buzzwords and just establish our baselines. Because honestly, the core concepts here are actually incredibly intuitive once you break them down. Batch processing simply means collecting data and processing it together in groups or chunks at a strictly scheduled time. Think back to our payroll example. All day long, employee attendance, the hours they've logged, payroll information, it's all just being collected. It kind of just sits there, gathering up in a database. Then, at night, when everyone is asleep, the server load is super low and compute costs are significantly cheaper. The system processes all that data together in one big batch. By the time you wake up the next morning, the results are ready and everyone gets paid. Other great examples of this would be your nightly sales reports or even your daily automated cloud backups. Now, the absolute defining characteristic of a batch system is step 2 right here, wait. You collect the data and then you deliberately wait. You do not process every single event immediately. You wait for the right scheduled time. You process the batch and then you get your result. It's orderly, it's highly scheduled, and it handles massive chunks of information all at once, which really optimizes your computing resources. Streaming, on the other hand, means processing data continuously as it arrives, completely without waiting for a batch. And this is exactly what your bank is doing when they check for credit card fraud. They aren't waiting for some nightly batch to review your purchases, right? They are analyzing that swipe the absolute millisecond it happens. You also see this with live delivery tracking on your food apps, live stock market tickers that are executing high-frequency trades, or even smart IoT sensors that adjust a building's HVAC temperature in real time. So the flow here is immediate. An event happens, it's processed immediately. Next event happens, processed immediately. It's this continuous, literally never-ending loop of data ingestion and computation. Waiting for a batch in these scenarios would make the information completely useless. Think about it. If you're tracking your pizza delivery, finding out where the driver was 6 hours ago doesn't help you much, does it? You definitely don't want a nightly batch report telling you your pizza is currently sitting cold on your front porch. You need to know the second they turn onto your street. Moving on to Section 2, the shopping example. One company, two approaches. Now, you might be sitting there thinking you need to choose whether your company is a batch company or a streaming company. But let's look at an online shopping scenario to illustrate how a single business practically uses both of these methods simultaneously. These two architectures actually live side by side in perfect harmony. On the batch side, every night, the e-commerce site collects all the day's sales, processes them, and updates the executive dashboard. It's absolutely perfect for daily business reporting and financial reconciliation. But on the streaming side, every single time a customer clicks buy, the system immediately processes that event to update the live inventory, trigger an email confirmation, and check for unusual activity. So it's one company, two completely different approaches, with each serving the exact right purpose in the larger architecture. Section 3, the cost of data freshness. How quickly do you need to know? And this brings us to a really fascinating tension between these two approaches, the concept of data freshness. The fundamental question you have to ask is how quickly do you actually need to know what just happened?
See, batch data might be hours or even a full day old, whereas streaming data is just seconds or milliseconds old. Because it allows for older, less fresh data, batch processing has some massive advantages. It's much simpler to set up, it's way easier to manage, and it is highly cost-effective, especially for those huge scheduled workloads where you can really take advantage of off-peak computing rates. The trade-off, of course, is that the data isn't perfectly fresh, meaning any business decisions based on it just have to wait. But hey, if you're just looking at a monthly financial statement, waiting isn't really a problem.
On the flip side, we have the heavy trade-offs of streaming. And yes, the advantages are incredible. You get very fresh data and much, much faster reaction times, but the costs are equally massive. You're dealing with much more complex infrastructure, incredibly difficult monitoring, and it can be vastly more expensive. You basically have to handle continuous data streams without ever dropping the ball. If a batch process fails, well, you can usually just rerun it. But if a streaming process crashes, you are literally losing live data by the millisecond, which can cause these cascading failures across your entire application. The absolutely crucial point here is this: more real-time doesn't automatically mean more valuable. Sometimes it just means more expensive and a lot more likely to break.
Okay, Section 4, a simple decision framework, asking the right business questions.
So, how do we resolve this tension before we write a single line of code or build out some massively expensive infrastructure? Well, here are the 5 critical questions you must ask. 1. How quickly is this information actually needed? 2. What happens if we wait an hour to process this? 3. What happens if we wait a full day? 4. Does a faster response actually create real, measurable business value? And 5. Can our organization actually afford the additional complexity of a streaming setup? I really want you to critically think about questions 2 and 3. Often, business leaders will just demand real-time data, but when you simply push back and ask, hey, would the business suffer if this dashboard was updated hourly instead of instantly? They usually quickly realize that an hour delay is perfectly fine, and that just saved the engineering team massive headaches. To really cement this mental model for you, use batch when data can be processed periodically, when cost and simplicity matter, and for things like reports and payroll. Use streaming when data absolutely must be processed continuously, when any delays would cause actual, tangible harm to the business, and for immediate actions like fraud alerts or live tracking. Trust me, internalizing these parameters right now will save you from making incredibly expensive architectural mistakes down the line. Section 5, Data Pipelines and AI. Let's connect this back to the 90-day challenge. So, yesterday on day 26, we learned that a data pipeline is simply the thing that moves and processes your data. Today is all about answering how that pipeline processes it. Are we doing it in chunks or continuously? Interestingly, AI systems actually utilize both. You have batch AI, where an algorithm might process a massive chunk of customer data overnight just to generate fresh product recommendations for the very next morning. And then you have streaming AI, where an algorithm is evaluating a card swipe for fraud the exact millisecond it happens. The crucial takeaway for us here is that an AI system doesn't automatically require real-time data to be highly effective. The processing approach just has to intelligently match the specific business need. And finally, Section 6, final recap, wrapping up day 27. To bring it all home, today we completely dismantled the speed myth. We learned that good data engineering isn't just about making everything faster. It's about building systems that are appropriate, highly reliable, cost-effective, and most importantly, actually useful for the business. Batch processes data in chunks, streaming processes data as it arrives. They are both incredibly powerful tools when you use them for the right jobs. So the next time you're looking at a new project, maybe a new dashboard or a brand new AI initiative, don't ask, can we make this real time? Instead, ask, do we actually need it to be real time? It's a simple shift in mindset for sure, but it will absolutely transform how you build your data infrastructure. And with that, that officially marks day 27 of the challenge complete. So think about your own workflows today. Where are you unnecessarily forcing real time when a simple batch process would do? Think on that, and I'll see you all tomorrow for day 28.